After visiting Deanston, the Scottish Roots tour bus continued on Highway A816 en route to Kennacraig Port, where we would meet the ferry that would take us to Islay in the late afternoon. Along the way, we stopped at Loch Lubnaig and then went to a farm where we milked some sheep.
You've got to be kidding.
Okay, maybe we didn't stop at a farm, but we did see a lot of sheep along the way. We then stopped at the town of Oban for an hour lunch, just long enough to visit the Oban Distillery and briefly visit the tasting room, but not do a tour. And while sampling a few drams of whiskey, you can learn a little bit about the town of Oban and the distillery in the tasting room. Oban Distillery is located on Scotland's west coast port town of Oban. In 1794, before the town of Oban was built in the surrounding harbor, the distillery was built by the brothers John and Hugh Stevenson, who operated it until 1866, when it was bought by Peter Kernstey. In 1883, it was then acquired by Walter Higgin and rebuilt. In 1898, Alexander Edward, who also owned Altamore Distillery, purchased the distillery from Higgin. In its first year of operation, it suffered major losses when one of their buyers, a major blending company, Patterson's of Leith, went out of business. In 1923, Oban was sold to Dewars and joined Distillers Company with that company in 1925. It then ceased operating from 1931 to 1937 and again from 1969 to 1972 when a new stillhouse was built, and in 1989 a new visitor center was added. Today, Oban Distillery is owned by Diageo. Oban Distillery is primarily known for its 14-year-old malt, which is marketed as part of Diageo's Classic Malts Selection range, launched in 1988. Also available is a Distiller's Edition bottling, which is finished in a Montanilla Fino sherry cask. There is also an 18-year-old limited edition and a rare 32-year-old edition. In December 2014, Oban introduced a non-age statement bottling called Oban Little Bay. While visiting the distillery, I was able to sample 3 distiller-exclusive Distiller's Edition bottlings, the one you saw previously, one that was distilled in 2003 and bottled in 2017, and another which was distilled in 2001 and bottled in 2016, which I brought home. Alrighty, so what I have here is the 2016 Distiller's Edition. When I was in the tasting room, I said I only wanted to bring home the Distiller's Exclusive, something I couldn't get back home. Why buy something at a distillery when I can get it back home? So I only wanted that, which I couldn't get anywhere else. So I had tasted the Distillery Exclusive and then didn't realize that the Distillery Editions are not Distillery Exclusives. They're 2 separate things. Now, out of the 3 that I tasted, the 2 Distillery Editions versus the Distillery Exclusive, this is the one I bought because this is the one I like the best. So even if I had a Distillery Exclusive, I would still want this bottle. You can get this online for anywhere between $83 and $100 US, so it is widely available. This was distilled in 2001, bottled in 2016. All right, let's get into it. Color-wise, it's sort of a nice amber copper color. It looks like whiskey. On the nose, medium plus intense aromas of, definitely get those sherry notes. Now, a lot of people say sherry notes, but then they don't go on to describe the fruits that you get from sherry. Sherry is made from grapes aged in a Solera system and has particular fruit characteristics, which typically are dried black fruits. Fig, date, raisins, a little bit of sultanas. It has some candied character to it. A little bit of candied ginger, honey, a little bit of toffee, a little bit of butterscotch. It has some smoke but it's really, really, really well integrated. Some peated, smoky whiskeys, you know, the peat will sort of hit you up front, and then the fruit maybe comes later, or maybe it sort of surrounds it or something like that. This is really, really, really well integrated smoke character, and I would say it's a medium to medium minus. So it's not a big punch in the face of smoke. Has a little bit of chocolatiness to it, a little bit of orange. In fact, it's almost like those chocolate-covered orange candies. A little bit of spice, cinnamon candies, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of baking spices. All right, on the palate. Now, I sort of learned it's best to review and understand a whiskey after it's broken the shoulder and get maybe about halfway down. I just opened this up about an hour ago. It's been sitting in the glass for about an hour, and it's tasting absolutely fantastic now. So if it's this good now, hopefully it'll get even better as I work my way through the bottle. So right out of the bottle, I am impressed. I'm going to give this a solid 92 points. It is rich. It is well balanced. It's at 43% alcohol by volume. It's got some sweet notes to it. It's got some spice to it. Body, acidity, just a hint of tannin. It's just really well balanced. It has the savory notes of the smoke. It's got the sweetness to it. And it's got a nice development. You get more of the dried fruits up front, and then sort of the spice and smoke sort of kick into the mid to the end of the palate. And stuttering for some stupid reason. And what lingers is usually I would cut this out, but I'm going to leave this in. What lingers is the spice and that sort of waft of smoke and chocolatey character to it. So the town of Oban was a really, really lovely town. We were on our way to Islay, so we had 1 hour for lunch. We weren't there to visit the distillery. In fact, I think there was only one other person from the group I was in that actually went into the distillery. Everybody else was running around buying lunch. So I figured, we got another, I don't know, half an hour or more to go to get to the docks, to then get on the ferry to head over to Islay. I can grab a sandwich and eat on the bus, right? So why spend my time sitting at a restaurant, waiting on a waiter, or even standing in line for long periods of time, whatever. Just go taste some whiskey, and then just grab a sandwich and right as you're on your way to the ferry. And then you had to wait for the ferry, so even if you had a lot to eat, whatever, you could just sit there while waiting for the ferry and eat it there. And once we got on the ferry, there was a cafe, whatever there, so you could eat on that too. Unfortunately, didn't have time to do a tour, which was kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have done that, but still, it was a real nice tasting room, and really enjoyed interacting with the people there. I just wish the gentleman that was working on the outside of the counter was a little clear as the difference between a distiller's edition versus a distiller's exclusive. All right, so the town of Oban really looks like a really lovely town. There are a number of these little harbor towns around Scotland along the coast. And there was another one that we had stopped into just to use the restroom, that sort of thing along the way. Really, really lovely. Would like to spend more time at those, do a little more exploring. But when you're part of a tour group versus driving by yourself, you don't have those options. So there are pros and cons to booking a tour with a tour group. The advantage is someone else is doing the driving, someone else knows the way, someone else can sort of point out the historical sites along the way. And you don't have to worry about tasting whiskey and then driving. And if you want to take a nap, you can take a nap as well. The disadvantage is if you want to linger or stay longer, you can't. So anyway, so in my next video, our bus took us to the docks where we would meet up with the ferry, and we would head over to Islay. So in my next few videos, you'll be watching or experiencing, I'll be sharing with you my tour of Islay distilleries. All right, until next time, cheers. Really tasty. If you have benefited from my wine or whiskey studies and you wish to support this ongoing work, I ask that you become a Patreon supporter. The link to my Patreon account is in the description box below.